Last night, Gambit Esports defeated G2 and Immortals to win DreamHack Austin 2017. And I think this was a very interesting result, a very interesting moment, because Gambit's now played 2 straight sort of Tier 2 tournaments in 2 straight weekends and become a very curious object for people to discuss. They've now done very well, second place and now first place, and you've seen them a lot. They're very everyone's looking at them, but people I don't think have a good take on them. I think there's a lot of confusion, a lot of curiosity. Can Gambit be a Tier 1 team? I think this is the question on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. And I think I'm a decent person, I'm a good person to sort of discuss this topic, and that's what I'm doing this video. If you haven't followed my work, or if you're new to the Wallaby Beatle experience, I wrote an article about a month ago called Gambit, how a second-tier team became the best in the world on one map. And that's obviously about Gambit and Cobblestone and how they had this 6-0 record on Cobblestone. They beat Optic, they beat North, they beat Verse Pro, all very good Cobblestone teams, as well as obviously 3 additional wins. Where and when they don't have this great roster, they don't have great results elsewhere, and so it's surprising to me. So I try to investigate that topic and see why they're good. And over time, as I continue to watch Gambit, they're probably my favorite second-tier team to watch. As I watch them more on their other maps, I look back and I think about how they perform on Cobblestone, their sort of the system on Cobblestone. I think there's a lot of turnover. I think it's obviously a lot of turnovers, the same teams, the same systems, same players. But yeah, no, I think their strengths are very distinctive, and I think the strengths that they have on Cobblestone can be replicated on their other maps, and this can become their defining sort of strength. There's just style, their characteristics that make them good and what make them bad. So let's first talk about what makes them good. So when I think about Cobblestone now, and maybe I couldn't perfectly articulate this in the article at the time. It was an article that was pretty well received. It was mentioned on the Star Ladder Analyst X, I think, once or twice, and then it was mentioned again last night by Machine. I got a little shout out, so that was nice before the Gambit Immortals game. But yeah, what I noticed on Cobblestone at the time was that basically what you have is Mo and not Adren, but Mo and Hobbit playing sort of the right side if you're looking at it from a CT perspective, left side if you're thinking about it from a T perspective of the site, sort of the chicken coop, statue, little cubby, hobbit hole, ramp, that with a broken wall and all that stuff on the one side of the B site, and then you have the other side of the B site that sort of gets cut off by the smoke wall that's usually thrown. So that's more like rock and the door and the drop down room and electric box and all that stuff. Now Dozia and Adren play that half of the site. They try to be the drop-down room players, and if that gets taken, Dozia will fall back into connector, and Adren will fall back over towards rock or electric boss and try to defend the drop-down push that way. So what happens is when that map gets that site gets bisected, usually it'll be the young players, the more sort of the skilled but not super veteran players, Mo and Hobbit. Now, Mo will also switch over to the A site sometimes and play sort of that look down air ramp like a lot of operas do, is sort of the secondary opera support player. Well, not support player, but like the secondary B site player when it's sometimes just held by one person. He'll sometimes do that, but generally if there's a B take, he'll be there, if the right information is there, and he can be, he'll play usually like statue, chicken coop, one of these typical op spots. Now, but what happens is when that site gets bisected, it will leave these younger guys alone, and they can try to get the 1 or 2 kills, try to get enough kills to allow a retake. And now Gambit's really good. I think what's the really distinct advantage of Gambit? Well, first of all, the overall macro, very highest level advantage for Gambit is they have a lot of veteran players. They have a lot of patient players. They're slower, they're more methodical, and they have Zeus as a even as a T side in-game leader can help them and do these really slow map control heavy sort of executes that allows them to do decently well on T sides despite not having the best skill in the world. That's sort of the bigger strength, but what that comes into play on Cobblestone is maps like Train as well, is that allows them to have a lot of retakes. So think about it, it's this, the young guys are on one half of the B site, and then Zeus rotates over and then joins Dozia and Dren on the other half of the B site. And then it becomes this really potent retake force. You obviously know Dozia and Dren is very potent clutch players, so they're very good in tandem, can win a lot of these 3v3s, 2v3s, 4v3s, 4v2s. They can win a lot of retakes. I think you saw people like Vendetta last night calling out that this is Gambit's strength, is to win these retakes, and you saw Striker on Twitter last night saying that they should have lost a lot of these rounds, but Gambit just have this amazing ability to sort of just come back into the B site and win these key retakes, right? So I think this is just a key strength of their team generally, and you see that sort of exact same sort of setup play out again on Train, where you have Hobbit playing the Ivy position, trying that very crucial, very critical portion of the map as a CT player, as the T's try to go and get in through that critical point, critical entrance, and then Hobbit will try to hold A main for pushes and also sort of support Hobbit as an Ivy player. So that's sort of that duo, that tandem of young players trying to just fighting the initial push, using just their skill and not relying on their veteran status, their good gameplay, or their patience, or anything like this, or their clutch ability. They just get a the best opportunity to kill as many players as possible immediately. And then sort of the retake force elsewhere on the map on B and on elsewhere, like maybe Zeus plays like Electric Box or something like that. Not Electric Box, but the sort of forward more towards the ladder room or A main or something like this. Maybe front Train, this sort of area. Maybe Zeus plays there, and then Dozia is the B player, and then a Dren will sort of be more back B, and you can sort of rotate around and do whatever the team. No, back out. He could be the secondary B player and more of a back A player, and help out either Zeus or the Hobbit Mo combination. Now, so this sort of same scenario plays out where they're in position to win a lot of retakes. Now, I think Cobblestone distinctly gives them an advantage and allows Mo to be especially effective from sort of these mid-distance off positions from Statue and Chicken Coop in the top of A. And it allows them to, just the way the map works, I think the retake possibilities are pretty decent when both Dren and Dozia are both together and ready to retake B after that smoke wall clears. So yeah, I think Cobblestones especially lends themselves to their strengths, but I think this strength is generally present on a lot of maps, and this is why they can win games versus G2, because they can make these retakes work. They can win these clutches, and Dosha especially had a good series versus G2, which is especially helped them win these sort of impossible or should have lost scenarios. So yeah, I think that's the defining strength of that team. And you obviously, talking about defining strengths of that team, you also have a Dren as sort of a very, very good player, a top 10 player in the world, maybe at times. He looked very good at the E-League Major, looked very good on that Cobblestone game versus Verse Pro at DreamHack Masters Las Vegas. So he's looked upticked in form. There's the Reddit user, Dren most consistent. He's known as a very consistent player, can always put up numbers, very good player. You'll play an aggressive entry role on the T side, but you can see his patience, sort of like the Zipnik-esque sort of quality to his CT side play, where he can just very methodically, using his skills, make retakes and clutches work for him, and especially alongside when he's got the veteran calm presence of Dozia and Zeus. I even think mentioning Zipnik's there is a good leeway to a comparison, because when you think of Astralis' ability to retake, it's always very poised, very slow, very methodical. They always group up, get together, use the utility, then try to do like a real retake, just like the T's make a take, they do like a real retake. Once they don't try, one player doesn't try to make a hero play and push early and fight back and immediately push back against the T's moving into the site. They'll be patient, they'll be calm, and I think you see that a lot in the Gambit team as well, and this is a key strength of them. It allowed them to win last night, I think. Now, another strength of the team you got to talk about is their map pool. You got to talk about Cobblestone. You got to talk about Overpass. Now, I think Overpass lends itself more to the very strong T controlling, heavy map control play of Zeus that he sort of became famous for back in the old Navi. Now, that was maybe what lent from Starks, and he was just sort of adopting Starks' style. But I think that lends itself to Zeus's sort of T play. But elsewhere, like on Train, that's sort of good for Gambit recently. You can also sort of see the good patience, the good strong CT side play. And you even saw that versus Immortals. Gambit only won 5 T rounds versus Immortals, but yet they could win versus Immortals because they had so many great T side round wins. And I think, this T side is just great for Gambit on certain maps. But talking about their map pool, before Summit and before DreamHack Austin, you'd always talk about Gambit as like a team that could win best of ones because they have 2 really good maps, Cobblestone and Overpass. But they didn't have the map pool. They didn't have the width. They had a very narrow map pool, I guess is the best way of saying this. They could only be good. Now they're very pointedly good. They had a lot of depth. They had a lot of strength on these 2 maps, but it was very slim in that they couldn't find wins elsewhere. I think 7 out of their 8 wins in 2017 prior to CS Summit and DreamHack Austin came from Cobblestone Overpass or some crazy stat like this. But at these 2 tournaments, you actually saw them build out their map pool. You saw them really taking advantage of Inferno at CS Summit. You saw them even winning Inferno versus SK in the grand finals. And then at DreamHack Austin, you saw them really use Train as an effective pick versus teams who don't typically play Train. So they won the first round versus Heroic, and they won Train again versus G2, and then they, of course, won again versus Immortals last night in the grand finals. So, I think Train's obviously shown up to be good. Now, Nuke's also sort of come into play. They won that game versus Hellraisers, known for being a good Nuke team. They even challenged G2 on their Nuke, and G2 seems to be lending itself more towards Nuke. They seem to be focusing more on Nuke. So that was a good showing that they can be on Nuke. But still, I would describe their map pool as like this. Cobblestone Overpass at the very top. Maybe you even want to put Train in there as a top map for them, as long as Overpass, because they didn't even play Overpass at CS Summit or DreamHack Austin. So you have to wonder what's going on with that. So maybe still Cobblestone Overpass, and maybe Train's getting up there. Then below that, Inferno. Inferno, I think, the way I would do it would be Cobblestone Overpass top. Then below that would be Train Inferno. And then below that would be Nuke. And then below that is the 2 really bad maps for Gambit, which is Cache and Mirage. Now, this sort of let's transition over to weaknesses, because I think this is a good transition point. Why I don't think they're good at Mirage and good at Cache, because when you think about Cache, it's a very much a skill-based map because of the effectiveness of certain executes that have been discovered with the advances of using Molotovs correctly. We've seen those videos of the five Molotov execute onto A on Cache. Because the executes are so good on Cache, you sort of are forced to play more aggressively as CT, to make plays as CT, to be a playmaker in CT, whether that be flashing into A main or flashing to get a player in checkers on B to get a good peek and to see what the Ts are doing, somehow get him advance up into the T side territory, or making a play at mid, sort of, and Cache, unlike Cobblestone, lends itself to CTs making these sorts of plays. So it becomes more about skill and becomes more about playmaking, and I think the classic complaint about Gambit is that they just don't have the super sick roster. They have a Dren, but after that, Dosia's obviously mainly comes up, but in that Cobblestone article that I wrote, I very pointedly didn't include Dosia when I was listing at why certain players were good at certain positions. I listed Hobbit as a good guy to be on ramp or in that cubby. I listed Mo as being especially effective, more effective than he normally is at statue, chicken coop, or top ramp. I said Zeus was doing well, especially well, considered his reputation as not a great fragger on sort of the A longs position, which I think is a very crucial position. Obviously, because usually it's only one guy playing A, Well, it's not always one guy playing A. Usually the start of rounds, they'll have people will try to do more stuff at A and then sort of move over to B if there's no information. But, there's a good, he's usually a solitary defender. So I thought it was impressive that he could sort of hold his own. But I didn't actually, of course, I mentioned Adren doing really good at holding drop down room, good at late rounds, good at the retakes, like I said before. But I think with Doja, I think he doesn't have a great impact on Cobblestone. I don't think he's had a great impact on this team. He hasn't been a great second star for Gambit. Maybe that's instead Hobbit being the good second star. Instead, even though Doja should be probably the second star. And I don't think when you think about Doja today, you could even put him in a second star category. Like, in Navi you have Simple and Guardian, and Guardian's in peak form again, or formerly in Navi you had Guardian and Flamey, or a team like Astralis you have Device and Zipnix and Dupree and Kirby, right? Or say G2 you have Shox and Kenny S. You have this great star duo. Maybe in Fnatic you have Flusha and Dennis and Olaf Meister, right? As being the stars on that team always changed around at various points of times. But you have guys who can be top 10 players, multiple top 10 players on the same team. And I don't think Doja has been a top 10 player. Now, he looked very, very good at DreamHack Austin. He was the X-God X Factor, right? He was performing way above his level, looking very good at winning so many key clutch scenarios, helping his team win all those late round scenarios, all those retakes like I've been saying. But I don't think he's had the impact of some of the other players, and I especially don't think he's had the impact in Cobble. Now he's playing the connector side of drop-down room. Maybe that doesn't, unless they're doing A takes or something, that doesn't, there's not a lot of impact. But, I don't think Doja's been up to a secondary star level for this team. So this is a concern. I'm also concerned about Mo. Mo, we obviously saw in that game on Train versus Heroic, him losing just so many duels to Yugi as an opera, and Yugi's not. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Yugi's not Guardian. He's not Kenny S. He's not Device. He's not Simple. I mean, it's okay. Let's credits due. Yugi did very well in that game, but he's not a top tier opera yet. The fact that Mo lost so many of these op duels is very concerning. You even saw him lose a op duel or two versus Kenny S and Hen 1. In the semifinals and finals last night, so that's concerning. And then Zeus, I think, is the most concerning thing. I don't know. I didn't see anyone say this on Twitter or during the cast, but Zeus. Well, I think it was said in the cast, but last night, Zeus was just getting abused over on the A halls on Cobblestone. He could not make that work. He was getting picked off so frequently. Not picked off, but he was being pushed in on so frequently, trying to play like that hay barrels position where the Snacks is obviously famous for doing well with the Mag 7, pushing up right as the T's throw their utility and getting 2 kills or something like this. Zeus tried that multiple times, couldn't make it work, couldn't get a kill, so it was not optimal. And I think you see sometimes like on that map versus Heroic, that Train map versus Heroic, Zeus can sometimes just not have any of the impact needed to be a decent player on that team. Now, Mo, he has the problem with the op versus op duels, but he can be decent. I think he's another X factor for the team. I know. I think Hobbit's a fairly consistent fragger, but you have these 3 players, Adren, who can be good or great. Doja has been typically average, but can be very good, like we saw in these finals and the semifinals. Then we also have Mo, who can be pretty bad at times. Like you can have really struggle versus Oppers, 1v1s versus Oppers. You had that 11 kill game versus SK on Train, it wasn't good enough. I don't know if it's unacceptable. That's maybe a little harsh, but it just wasn't good enough to give Gambit a chance to win, having 11 kills versus SK on Train in the grand finals of CS Summit. Now he had better impact on Train this tournament, but you did see that issue with op duels. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, it's not League of Legends where mid plays mid and top plays top and AD carry and support play AD carry and support. Ops don't always find each other early in rounds when they try to make picks against each other. That doesn't happen that frequently, and sometimes I think players talk about or analysts or commentators talk about who's going to win the op fight, and it's too dramatized because they just don't run into each other that much. But when Yugi was just dominating Mo, like on training, I mean that's obviously a cause for concern. And I think Mo's just generally been not as good as an opper as you'd want him to be. You want your opper to be a star player just because of the expense of that gun. That sort of typical argument people say about oppers. So there's a lot of weaknesses there, and I also think a weakness of their map pool or their map picking or their pick and ban phase style. I would call it. I want to introduce these new terms. I hope this catches on as having teams either have a top map preference or a mid map preference. And I say that I mean some teams will say, okay, we're the best team in the world on Cobblestone, we're the best team in the world on Overpass. We're going to pick that map all the time, every chance we get. That's a top map preference, to just abuse your best map. But you saw that Gambit did not pick Cobblestone a single time at DreamHack Austin. It was like picked as like, you know, when the picks and bans are all done, when there's nothing left, it's the third map in a best of 3. You saw that happen in the semifinals and finals, but they didn't actually pick it, you know, first. I think they have a middle map preference. They see a map that they think they're good on or decent on, like Train, like Nuke, like Inferno, and they look at their opponent's map pool and like, well, they're not good at, say, Inferno, so we'll pick Inferno versus them. So this is the middle. I call this a middle map pool preference. It's something that I think Verse Pro had at the beginning of the year, picking maps like Cash versus North, trying to abuse the fact that the North isn't known as a cash team, and they were Verse Pro is only like a decent cash team, a good cash team in the past maybe, but yeah, trying to use that cash pick to abuse the other team's poor map pool, so having this middle map preference. I think this could be a problem. I think it can be an effective strategy. You saw it work here, picking Train versus Immortals and G2, but I think when you have faced these best teams in the world, like Verse Pro in the past at their height, when they were very, very good at tournaments like the E-League Major and DreamHack Masters Las Vegas, or Astralis at, you know, just generally the last 5-6 months now that they've been together. 5-6 months. They just have such a wide map pool. You can't abuse Astralis on Train. You can't abuse Astralis on Nuke. Well, if you're the best team in the world, you can abuse Astralis on Nuke. You win Nuke games. But you can't, you know, versus even Mirage, I mean, Astralis can play that even though it's not something they ever pick. They have a very wide, very effective map pool, so there's not going to be room for abuse. And, you know, Gambit does have a room for abuse in themselves in the Cash or Mirage pick, depending on which one they ban. Now, typically Mirage was their typical ban, but now they're banning Cash more. They lost a lot of Cash games at CS Summit. But yeah, no, so I think this middle map preference is going to be especially effective versus tier 2 teams and lower tier 1 teams. I don't think it can be effective versus the best team in the world. And another weakness, not talking about their map pool or their players, I think another weakness is actually their strength in a weird way. This ability to find retakes into win clutches, which with either Dren or Dozia having a really good game. I don't know if you can always rely on that. That's not a super reliable method for victory, right? For them to take the site and you just being really good at retaking the site. Because versus, you know, the best players in the world, it's like they're on CT side now. They can just hold angles and be very strong. You know, just aimers. They can out aim you. So I think this is an issue, and you saw this versus CLG. They just couldn't win those key clutches. They won a pistol round one. They lost a pistol round 1v1 versus CLG. When they're on the CT side, they lost a couple key like 1vx situations. I think FNS had a really good clutch on the A site versus Gambit. So yeah, there's scenarios where I think Gambit just can't rely on winning these retakes, and they just won't win retakes as frequently as they have this tournament, especially if Dosa just drops back down to a more normal level, even if he is a good player, second best player for Gambit. You know, these tournaments where he's going off, I think it's going to be pretty rare. We've seen this in 2017. He's never had a tournament on this level before. So I think, yeah, I think these weaknesses are noticeable, and they're going to be a very important factor in Gambit's chances at moving up to tier 1 moving forward. Now, do they have the opportunity? do they have the chance to move into the Tier 1? Now, Tier 1, Astralis, FaZe, Pro, G2, Na'Vi, North, Fnatic, and am I missing a team? FaZe. Did I say FaZe? I think I said FaZe. So yeah, those 8 teams: Astralis, FaZe, Astralis, FaZe, North, Pro, Na'Vi, Fnatic, G2, and what did I miss? I'm missing one. Okay, I think I got all 8 between those 2 lists I just did. Yeah, okay, whatever. But yeah, anyway, yeah, there's you know what 8 teams I'm talking about. It's very classic list. This is Tier 1, and the Tier 2 teams are Heroic, Gambit, Cloud9, NIP, Liquid, Optic, Hellraisers. So those are sort of the Tier 2 teams. So I think so the question is, can Gambit beat a team like Fnatic? Can it beat a team like North? Some of these, maybe a team like Pro or SK when they were slumping at IEM Katowice or Star Ladder. Can they actually break in? Now I think it's a possibility. You gotta remember that Gambit had 3 opportunities to be a Tier 1 team these last 2 weeks. They had 2 opportunities versus SK and 1 versus G2, and they just won the 1 versus G2. But yeah, I don't know if they can do this consistently. Like I said, with all these weaknesses, can they keep getting abused? People can play to Zeus, can go at Zeus as T's like they G2 seem to be doing on Cobblestone. Can that be abused? Can in a game like Gambit's game versus CLG, when they're not winning the clutches, will that be just too much, or can't win the retakes? Will that be too much for Gambit? Maybe that's just Gambit just doesn't win if they can't win those. And this CLG is not the best team in the world. I mean, I think they're barely a Tier 2 team. They might actually be a Tier 3 team because they had a pretty good Star Ladder, but they couldn't. We haven't seen much of them. We can't see if they're going to repeat that because they couldn't attend these last 2 tournaments. They couldn't even make it through the online qualifier. They didn't get invited. So yeah, even losing a CLG there is very concerning. So, and then you don't know if Doja or Dren or Mo, maybe Hobbit's fairly consistent, can show up and have these X Factor. They can be these X Factor players for the team, have 10 kills more or 8 kills more, or be 20-30% more effective than normal and carry Gambit over the top. Because a lot of these games that Gambit are winning are very, very close. So I don't think they can do it consistently. Now, I do think there's an opportunity in that some of these top 8 teams slump sometimes, and that Gambit can beat these top 8 teams and occasionally get a best of 3 wins. Now, I don't think they can do a consistency. I don't think their strength are consistent enough. I just don't think they have the skill. I think they're abusable in their skill sometimes, or sometimes they just don't have enough firepower come out and be effective. So yeah, Gambit can win Tier 2 events. They can do very well at Tier 2 events, but that does not make them a Tier 1 team. I don't think they're going to be able to very consistently be in the semifinals of a tournament, of the best tournaments in the scene moving forward. So maybe they can make top 8s, and maybe if they really overperform, they can make a semifinals, but I don't think they're ever going to be, I don't know if they ever can be a Tier 1 team. I think that's maybe a bit of a push, maybe too much of a stretch.